All right, guys, we have a massive update as 49ers Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch just spoke to the media for their end of year press conference. I'm going to go through and hit all the major topics that came out of this meeting. We have injury updates, potential trade conversations, the end of eras for some particular players. A lot of things to get into, even electrical substation talk at the San Francisco 49ers press conference. We'll get in to all of that. But of course, let's get started right now. And I think one of the bigger stories, I think, to come out of this press conference, and it's more of just placing a bow on an existing situation, is one of the most poignant quotes to come out of this press conference was John Lynch saying that Brandon Aiyuk has played his last snaps with the San Francisco 49ers and his time with the Niners is over. At the end of the press conference, they kind of followed up with the situation. Kyle Shanahan had said this is a situation that he's never seen in 22 years of coaching. Basically said that when he was trying to reach out, BA was not responding, was not getting back to the team, not getting back to anyone. And they said it was multiple people who was trying to reach out. And basically, from the way that the 49ers are positioning this, is Brandon Aiyuk ghosted them. So obviously, just such a sad ending. There's so many different emotions and feelings that come from this because, as you guys know, I'm a big fan of BA, or, was a big fan of BA. But I'm just really disappointed. Obviously, there's probably more to the story than any of us know. But from what I can see from the outside looking in, I just, I don't think he handled this well. I think this was handled very immaturely. And it just has made everyone look bad in this situation, including himself. So it's a sad ending because the San Francisco 49ers could have used this guy to win some football games. And unfortunately, he opted not to do that. And so his time with the San Francisco 49ers comes to an end. However, the 49ers still control his rights. So I would assume that the 49ers would be able to trade him. I don't expect he gets traded for much of anything. The big concern with trading him is his contract. However, the 49ers did void a lot of the money on his contract, which I think makes it more attractable for other teams to make a trade for him. So I think that is a benefit to the Niners by being able to get out of that money, and it's not going to transfer to the next team. So I could see like a 6-7 pick swap with Brandon Aiyuk. I saw some people float, well, AJ Brown for Brandon Aiyuk. I don't know. I think Brandon Ayuk's reputation is pretty tarnished at this point. So I don't think anyone is going to make any type of investment into him unless it is a straight up no risk type of deal. So we'll see what happens, but an unfortunate end to what once was an extremely promising career for a former all-pro wide receiver. Let's get into some of the other updates. Obviously, one of the bigger news is to come out of this last week is Robert Saleh getting the head coaching job with the Tennessee Titans. So naturally, that changes and shifts conversations over to who is going to replace Robert Saleh as the 49ers defensive coordinator. I posted about this and made a video about this regarding who I believed was going to be the potential next defensive coordinator. And I do believe it's most likely going to be Gus Bradley. Belief and who I want to be DC are two completely different things. However, I'm not as down on the Gus Bradley hiring as everyone is. I've seen all the comments. They're saying it's Nick Sorensen 2.0, which I understand. They don't want Nick Sorensen. However, this isn't a Nick Sorensen situation, from my opinion. Gus Bradley has been a DC in the NFL for a long time. He's been a head coach at one point. And he's been with the 49ers, under Robert Saleh to see how he does everything. And there's been a lot of positive feedback to come out about Gus Bradley from 49ers players. So, although I understand the easy correlation to Nick Sorensen, I don't believe it's the same. I would say if you asked me who I wanted from an ideal situation, I would love Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz's defenses over the years has given Kyle fits, has given that type of offense fits. And I think with Kyle's offense spreading across the league, you want one of those DCs who knows how to stop it. So for me personally, yes, I would love to see Jim Schwartz, but I do think it will be Gus Bradley. I think that's why Gus Bradley was hired as well, to kind of just shadow and be in this potential role when the time came about. So that's the way that I'm looking at it. I know a lot of people aren't going to be happy with it. Kyle Shanahan confirmed that Gus Bradley is the top internal candidate to replace Robert Saleh. So we'll see where that goes from here. Kyle Shanahan was asked about injuries to come out of the Seattle Seahawks games, and Alfred Collins reportedly has a shoulder injury that could require surgery. So we will have to follow up a little bit more about that and what that entails. They weren't too specific about the shoulder. I don't know if it was a tear or I don't know really. I might have just missed it as well, but what I did gather is he did suffer a shoulder injury, and it very well could require surgery. However, that has not been officially determined yet. One of the more interesting cases of this season was Nick Martin. The 49ers had so many injuries at linebacker that at the end they had guys like Garrett Wallow and Eric Kendricks starting for them. Both guys that weren't on the roster about a month and a half ago. So, you have a third round draft pick that you spent on Nick Martin. The hope is that he plays, and he could barely get on the field. I don't know why. I don't know what it was, but the 49ers refused to put him out there. Then when he got finally got some opportunities, he got a concussion and weirdly long concussion. So I don't know if that is a reflection of just how severe the injury was. And of course, you don't want to mess around with concussions. It's a very serious injury. So, but ironically, according to Kyle Shanahan, he was cleared from the concussion protocol today. He said he wasn't cleared because of the protocol and not, Nick Martin not being able to get through it. So I don't know. It's been a weird situation with Nick Martin. When he was healthy, when he's not healthy, it was a weird situation. And it's just unfortunate because the San Francisco 49ers needed linebacker help. And you spent a third round draft pick on a guy who just could not get on the field when he was healthy. And of course, couldn't get on the field when he wasn't healthy. So he's cleared though. So we'll see what that means for him looking next year. When you look at, I think, the rookie class, he's going to be a guy that's going to have a lot of pressure on him heading into next year to see how he bounces back and performs. We all know he's got the potential. He's got the athletic ability, but still remains to be seen how he will develop into an NFL player. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, one of the biggest free agents for the San Francisco 49ers is wide receiver Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings, when speaking to the media, was speaking to the media like a guy who is not going to be returning to the San Francisco 49ers. We know the 49ers engaged in contract negotiations with him throughout the summer. They ultimately did not come to terms on a negotiation. All they did was give him an incentive bump, which I believe he hit a good amount of those. So he was able to recoup more money, but he is now hitting the market as a unrestricted free agent. And from everything that we have heard, he is looking for a contract worth $20 to $22 million per year on average. And although I think he has earned that, I don't think the 49ers are going to be the one to give him that. I would suggest against it. I love Juwan. I think he has been a phenomenal San Francisco 49ers, especially as a seventh round draft pick, a guy was cut. Um, and what he's been able to provide, his energy, his aggressiveness, his blocking ability, third and Jawan, he's loved here. But unfortunately, for $22 million a year, I think the 49ers are going to have to look elsewhere, and try to either replace him in the draft or replace him in free agency with a more cost-effective option. So I do believe this is the end of the road for Juwan Jennings with the San Francisco 49ers. I appreciate him. I appreciate his contributions and wish him nothing but the best. If he returns, that will be great. The 49ers said we'd love to have him back. We'll see how that goes. But all that language, and again, it's a player who is not currently under contract. So it's hard to give any type of definitive language about said player. But I do believe that his road has come to an end. So unfortunately, we'll see what happens with that. The 49ers, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, they were asked about Mac Jones, and they just lit up. Just absolutely love Mac. John Lynch said Mac Jones made the building better, made the whole team better, made the quarterback room better. And I agree with all of that. I made a post about this yesterday on X, just talking about how I was wrong on Mac. I was a big no Mac, anyone but Mac at 3 kind of a guy. And although I still, I understand the logic behind not drafting Mac Jones at 3, and the hindsight being the 49ers should have never traded up. They should have stood pat and just took Mac Jones at 12, which would have been fine. Mac Jones should have been the pick at 3 over Trey Lance, hindsight being what it is. He would have fit this team. He would have fit the offense. Now, it's not to say that he would have had the same trajectory. He's obviously matured quite a bit since being in the league, but you can see the impact that he's had. This guy is going to be a starting NFL quarterback. It's something that I said watching him in training camp. I said that this guy is a starting caliber quarterback. There were days in training camp this year that he was better. He had better days than Brock. So I'm not surprised that when he played well. And, the locker room loved him. The organization loved him. And he's currently under contract for 1 more year. So the 49ers have no obligation to trade him. But if the 49ers do want the most return on investment, which was a very little investment, they can really maximize a draft pick trade or a player trade if they were to move Mac Jones, because he's making peanuts heading into next season. So a team that's looking for a bridge quarterback, for a couple years, he would be perfect. And could, I would say the baseline for him is a second round pick, because if they were just to keep him and he were to walk in free agency next season, they'll probably get a third round comp pick for him. So the baseline ask is 2, a second plus. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a team that is picking late first that might offer up that pick, or a combination of picks or a pick plus player. It might be hard to get a first for Mac, but I would say late first value is where he's at. But you can hit that value, like I said, through a combination of different things: a second plus a player, a second plus multiple later picks, second plus future. You can get that value without getting an actual first round pick back. So we'll see if the 49ers trade him, because I think they're totally content with keeping him, because clearly he's an asset. And especially with Brock's injury history, having that ace in the hole isn't a bad thing. So it'll be fascinating to see what the 49ers do. But if they do decide to trade him, I do think there will be a market. And I do think they'll listen, but I don't think they're going to sell low. It's either sell high or keep him. There's really no incentive to get rid of him unless they can get an immense value for him. So I appreciate Mac. I think he's been phenomenal. Uh, I think, and just like John Lynch said, um, I think that I think it's been a great for Brock because I don't think many people have really taken a step back to think about this. You know, when Brock entered the league, yes, he had Jimmy Garoppolo there. He had Trey Lance there, but Jimmy was 1 foot out the door. Jimmy was practicing on the side field when Brock Purdy showed up. Like Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't even allowed to participate in team activities when Brock Purdy showed up as a rookie. So I have no idea what their relationship was. And then obviously Jimmy goes down mid-season, Brock gets thrust in, and Brock's really just kind of been running. You know, he's been the kind of alpha in the room. There really hasn't been a lot of veteran presence. Um, behind him. Yes, they brought in Sam Darnold, but we heard from Sam. Sam's like, I learned a ton from Brock. Where I think this is the first time where Brock learned a lot from someone else and learned a lot from Mac. And I think that was huge. I really do. So I think Mac was great. I know this topic has become insanely viral. I haven't talked about it on this channel before. Um, I mean, I think the way that the 49ers described it is pretty rational. You know, that we don't know what the implications are of the electrical substation, but I personally can't rule it out because I'm not an expert in the matter, so I have no idea. I'm not going to pretend like I haven't seen all the 40, all the players go from Bluetooth headphones to wired headphones due to Bluetooth and EMF and all that stuff as more studies come out about this stuff. And charging your phone next to your bed is not good. Like, I don't know. There are things out there that seem valid in regards to things like this. It is frequency. Humans are theoretically frequency. Everything is theoretically a frequency. So couldn't frequencies potentially get disjointed when you have again, I'm not an expert at this, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you one way or the other, but the 49ers clearly have said that they're going to look into this, and they have looked into this, and they're still trying to determine if this is a real issue. And they also said, because the 49ers health and wellness is their top priority. So if this is something that is causing an issue, they need to get to the bottom of it, and they need to rule it out. So with that being said, that I do believe they are going to be studying this. I do believe that this is going to be a real thing that is going to be addressed. I think it's to the point where, I've heard Delaney Walker talk about this. I don't know if you've heard that particular interview that he had on Bussin' with the Boys, former 49ers tight end back with the Harbaugh days where they still practice here. And they talked about this. He even said you could feel it in your ears, like this buzzing. So I don't know. All we know is that the 49ers are the most injured team in the NFL and have been for a long time, and we can't really figure out why. So I do think that they are just going to continue to look into this and see how it comes together. But crazy situation nonetheless. Nick Bosa is tracking towards being available for a training camp, although no clear timetable for return has been set. I don't think they want to, set any timetables right now, and they'll just let that thing play out as it comes. Robert Saleh, obviously hired by the Titans. Kyle Shanahan said he expects Robert to request to interview some of his staff. So I know people are upset about Robert Saleh leaving. Might not be the end. We might have more players that are leaving with him as well. So we'll have to figure that out when that situation comes, and see what the 49ers allow, what they can block, or what they won't block. So that'll be interesting. And then, as we talked about, we had mentioned this at the beginning, Kyle Shanahan saying that he had never seen something like this in the last 22 years of being a head coach. So there were obviously other things that were discussed, but I think to me those were the main points of emphasis from the press conference today. The 49ers got a lot of work ahead of them. They got to retool this roster. They don't have as many draft picks as they did last year. They need to hit. They need to hit on the draft. They need to hit in free agency. They need to. There's a lot of work ahead of them to be able to get back. So we'll see how it goes. But let me know what you guys think about all this stuff in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.